Samuel Chu, and this is my explanation of my creative response final. So I basically created a guide, a comprehensive guide on understanding the various intervals in music. So I essentially created this because I struggled to learn the various intervals when I was in Music 1A and in the beginning of Music 1B. Specifically with the augmented and diminished and perfect intervals, there's a lot to keep track of when trying to understand those things. And I think R2C kind of explains all of those various intervals in different chapters, so it makes it hard to consolidate that information. So that's what I kind of did here. I consolidated all this information starting from a very basic level. So I explained what a half step is, like examples of them, what a whole step is, and what like a semitone is. And I just gave some introductory examples, explained a generic interval, which is basically, I just said you can count the number of notes. So if you want to find a generic interval of A to C, that's 3 because you can count A, B, and C. Then I went into the more complicated stuff where I explained what major, minor, augmented, diminished, and perfect qualities were. And in here, I basically give a condensed, not too hard to read, but just easy to reference guide where essentially you have diminished, minor, major, augmented. You can see how many half notes or whole notes there are for each of these things. There's some examples, so you can see that like a minor second is between B and C, but then it would not be a minor second between C and C sharp. So just trying to explain every single detail because there are a lot of things to keep track of here. So just keep going on, and then we have perfect right here. We also have down here, I had a longer explanation just because I was just explaining something that worked for me when trying to identify notes that are further apart, so maybe like a major 6th or a major 7th. Sometimes I would often, if I was trying to give you an example, if I was trying to find a relationship between C sharp and A, I would write out the major scale of C sharp, and if A was in that major scale, then you could just say, well, let's see, what's the generic interval between C sharp and A? I believe that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's a 6. So yeah, if you wanted to find the relationship between C sharp and A, and then that would be a major 6 because you can C sharp and A sharp, that would be a major 6 because A sharp lies in the major scale of C sharp. But that's just one trick, and I elaborated how you can use that if it's not exactly a major 6, if it's a minor 6 or something like that also, or diminished or so on and so forth. So yeah, and then I also gave a chart explaining the intervals and how many half steps there are for each interval, which is a helpful guide. And lastly, I gave some practice questions where I think R2C doesn't do a good job of, when you get something wrong, it doesn't explain, just gives you a red X. But here I gave some practice questions where you can check your answers and you can also understand exactly the thought process is to arrive at that answer. So I understand that for R2C, this probably would be pretty hard to do for all the questions, but I think this would be really helpful if they added this to R2C. But yeah, overall, just creating a condensed, consolidated guide to understanding intervals because, like I said earlier, it's very hard to it was very hard for me to learn what these things were and how I could yeah, just having one central place would be really helpful.